Hey everyone, welcome to my brand new channel. I hope you're all doing super well. So, spooky season is officially here, and this is my favorite season. I love anything mystery, thriller, and horror. So, what better way to kick off spooky season, and what better way to launch this new channel than with a thriller horror movie? Today, we're going to be discussing the movie Speak No Evil. It was released in 2022, and this is actually a Danish foreign film. So, unless you're like really into the film scene over there, you're not really going to recognize any of the actors, or at least I didn't personally, but everyone in it was extremely talented. Universal actually had an American remake of the movie come out on September 13th, starring James McAvoy, who was in the movie Split. A lot of people did think it was weird that a remake was coming out 2 years after the original. I thought it was a bit strange too, because I was like, wait, didn't the original just come out? But James McAvoy is a really amazing actor, so I already know he's gonna kill this role. I haven't seen the remake yet. I do really want to watch it, but for now in this video, I'm going to focus on the original movie. I seriously give this movie like a 9 out of 10. It was so amazing, so suspenseful. I was literally yelling at my television at certain parts because I was so frustrated with the movie, not because it was bad, but more of just like the choices that they were making. Now, just to give a quick teaser, the movie is about a family who meets another family on vacation and befriends them against their better judgment, and their boundaries are pushed until things take a dark turn. This movie is definitely more of like a slow burn movie, but I really like those kinds of movies because they kind of keep you guessing about what's going to happen next. So yeah, that's pretty much what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Thank you all so much for being here and for supporting my new channel. I truly appreciate it. I am so excited about this new channel. I know you guys have missed the movie videos. I've missed them too, trust me. So if you guys want more movie videos, want more horror and thriller stories, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below so you guys can join the spooky familia. I would really appreciate it if you guys could also give this video a thumbs up, por favor. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say. Let's jump right in and let's talk about Speak No Evil. We start off with a very creepy shot from the inside of a moving car. All we can see is a bit of the car's headlights showing the dirt road, and the rest of the screen is completely dark, meaning there's no street lights, no house lights, and no other cars nearby. Wherever this car is going, it's somewhere secluded. The car comes to a stop in the middle of the road, and two adult-sized figures exit the car from the driver's seat and passenger seat and go to the trunk and to the backseat door without saying anything to each other or anything at all. It's too dark to make out who these people are or what they're doing, but it can't be anything good. This scene is, in a way, an ominous warning of what's to come, because the next scene starts with a Tuscany, Italy landscape shot that is the complete opposite of what we just saw. It's a beautiful blue hotel pool surrounded by a green valley that seems to go on forever. A few families are hanging out at the pool, including the main characters of the movie, a Danish family of 3. We see Agnes, a girl around 7 years old who is polite, well-behaved, and a kind child, jump into the water. Her mother, Louise, who's calm, polite, and nice, watches her from her lounge chair. Sitting next to her is her husband Bjorn reading a book. Now, Bjorn is very meek and the type of person who never really speaks up for himself. So when another man comes up to him and says, "I'm sorry, is this chair free?" Bjorn says, "Yeah, I'm sure," and he moves his daughter's clothes, the book, and the towels off the chair. "Thank you so much." "Yeah, you're welcome." Instead of Bjorn saying, "No, this chair isn't open, I'm saving it for my daughter," he just lets the other man take it to avoid any type of confrontation. The man takes a chair and he brings it over to where his wife and his son are sitting, and then he gets in the pool. After hanging out at the pool for some time, the family heads over to the hotel room, and this hotel is nice. It's not like a generic hotel with like 2 beds and like a little TV. This looks more like a fancy boutique hotel that must be extremely expensive. Agnes starts strong with her babysitter as her parents, Bjorn and Louise, get ready to head out the door. The parents kind of like switch between speaking Danish to their daughter and English to the babysitter. They tell Agnes that they're leaving, and then Louise adds, "And please don't give her any apple juice before bedtime." "No apple juice, yes, just like the other night," says a babysitter. "All right, well, bye, ciao," the parents say as they leave the room. As they're walking down the hotel stairs, Bjorn says, "Can we agree not to sit next to Derek and Hannah tonight? I'm fed up with their cooking class." Louise simply laughs at this, and they continue making their way to dinner. Now, this dinner scene is stunning. They're what looks like in the backyard or like the garden area of the hotel, and it's just beautiful. Around 30 adults sit under a white gazebo with lights attached to it, having a dinner party. Everything just looks so elegant and European. I mean, it's a really beautiful setup, and you can tell that this hotel, like I said, isn't like super big or anything. It's more of like a boutique hotel. So basically, all of the guests at the hotel are having dinner together. You should come with us to the cooking class tomorrow because I believe tomorrow they're making some gnocchi. Louise politely smiles and nods at this. I mean, clearly her and Bjorn were sat across from Derek and Hannah after all, the couple that they were trying to avoid. At the opposite end of the table, the man from the pool stands up and he makes a toast to the group. He seems charismatic and he's also sort of handsome. He jokes about knocking on people's doors the night before when him and his wife returned to the hotel late at night drunk and were confused about which room was theirs. Everyone laughs with him and is clearly charmed by him. He then switches to a more meaningful tone and he says, "We don't know each other, that's how it goes on holidays, but I want to meet new people because you all look so nice and beautiful, so I want to toast to you guys. To Italy, of course, to the food, of course, and to love. To love." Everyone says and cheers. I mean, this man seems to be the opposite of Bjorn. I mean, he's confident, he's outgoing, he's talkative, and Bjorn is more on the boring side. He's kind of just there. After dinner, all the adults sit outside and they watch a private opera performance as they drink red wine. Bjorn and the man who just made the speech make eye contact with each other and they kind of like raise their glasses to each other before turning their focus back to the performance. Later that night, Louise, Agnes, and Bjorn all share a bed. The mom and the daughter are fast asleep, but Bjorn kind of just stares at the ceiling wide awake. He gets up, he looks out the window at the darkness, and he sees a man whose face is blocked by shadows standing in the courtyard. But when he looks again, the man is now gone. Bjorn seems a little bit confused, but he's definitely not worried or afraid. Maybe it was just a shadow, or maybe it was his imagination. The next day, Louise, Agnes, and Bjorn are in town looking at a menu outside of a restaurant, deciding if they should eat there. Perhaps a bit touristy? Well, we are tourists too, Louise says. "Dad, I can't find Ninnis," Agnes says. "Damn it, take care of that bunny," says Bjorn. "Hey, please don't talk like that," Louise says. Bjorn sighs, annoyed, and then he sets off to find Ninnis. He walks around the beautiful Italian cobblestone roads and he starts asking random people if they've seen Agnes's toy. "It's like a bunny for kids," he says to two strangers. He continues his search, eventually finding the stuffed bunny on a ledge overlooking a view. When he returns to his family, he finds them talking to the man from the pool, his wife, and his son, so Bjorn joins them as well. We learn that this man's name is Patrick and his wife's name is Karin. Like I mentioned before, Patrick is charming and charismatic. He's someone you would easily gravitate towards, and Karin is really beautiful and seems sweet. "And what's your name?" Louise asks their 6-year-old son. Abel has some difficulty speaking, so if he feels some sort of pressure, he can get a little bit insecure, Patrick explains. "There's no pressure at all," Louise says, understanding. Abel is a really cute kid, but he's obviously very shy and quiet. Patrick asks Bjorn, "You went to find the rabbit?" "Yes." "That's very heroic of you." "Thank you," Bjorn says, laughing it off. No, I'm serious. Respect." "Well, thanks," Bjorn says proudly. I mean, he has clearly really been affected by Patrick's kind words, and this compliment means a lot to him. "So, did you guys have lunch yet?" Patrick asks. The two families have lunch together, and they get to know each other a little bit more. Patrick and Karin explain how they are Dutch and that they live in the Holland countryside. "Wow, I'd love to move outside the city and being close to nature and all," Louise says. "Well, you should come and visit us. That would be great." Just then, their food arrives. "So, you're vegetarian?" Patrick asks Louise. "Yeah, I eat fish, but yes, I'm a vegetarian." "That's so good. I mean, we could all learn from you. It's so good for the environment," Patrick says. "Thank you," Louise proudly replies. As the families discuss the similarities between their cultures, Patrick casually mentions a past colleague from when he worked at a hospital, and this is when Bjorn says, "Oh, you're a doctor?" "Yeah," Patrick replies like it's no big deal. We can see at this meal that the families are getting along really well and that Bjorn has definitely taken a liking to Patrick. I mean, he's good looking, he has a beautiful family, he lives in the countryside, and he's a doctor. I mean, he seems like the perfect man. That night, all the adults are back at another dinner party at their hotel, and this time, Bjorn, Louise, Patrick, and Karin are all sitting together, laughing, talking, and having a great time. It's a completely different dinner than the last time when Bjorn and Louise were stuck in boring small talk with that other couple. Now, they look happy and in a way, pool of life. A few days go by and the vacation is over. Louise, Bjorn, and Agnes are now back at home in their condo, back to their regular routines. On their way in, Bjorn checks the mailbox as Louise tells Agnes it's time to get ready for bed. Bjorn goes to read Agnes a story before bed, and as he's finishing up, Agnes asks, "Can you leave the light on?" "Yes, of course," Bjorn says. He tucks Agnes in bed and then walks out into the living room where Louise is reading. "Take a look at what we got, honey," and he hands her a postcard and she reads it out loud. "Dear Louise, Bjorn, and Agnes, how are you? We were just talking the other day how nice it was spending time with you this summer, and even though it's been a while, we'd love to invite you to come visit us. What do you say? A weekend in the Dutch countryside, food, wine, and long walks? And oh, by the way, Abel keeps mentioning Agnes. So funny. He really misses her. All the best from Abel, Patrick, and Karin." "Wouldn't that be fun?" Bjorn asks. "It's perhaps a bit too long to spend with some people we barely know," Louise says before immediately changing the subject to the new winter clothes that they need to get for Agnes. And even though Bjorn clearly wants to go, or at least wants to discuss it further, he allows the topic to be changed and goes along with it. In the next scene, Louise and Bjorn watch Agnes at a school production. Bjorn seems to kind of just be going along with the clapping rather than truly being excited to watch his daughter at a recital. You know, it's kind of just showing how mundane he feels about his life. It just seems like he's kind of going through the motions. It's another very regular day, and Bjorn and Louise are having their two friends over at their condo for a dinner party. Just as they start eating, Bjorn tells them, "So we received an invitation from the people we met in Tuscany this summer to come visit them." Clearly, this was an exciting invitation to him, and instead of being direct with his wife about wanting to go, it seems like he hopes a conversation with friends about it might help sway his wife into going. "Who are they? Are they nice?" the guest asks. "Very nice," Bjorn replies. "Yeah, I mean, they were really nice, and he's a doctor," Louise adds. Bjorn says, "We just don't know if we should go or what to do." "Well, we've already flown twice this year," Louise explains. "Where are they from?" "Holland." "Then just drive," their guest replies. "It's always nice to have friends abroad." "Yes, and I think perhaps it would be a little impolite to decline," the guests say. Louise nods in agreement, and one of the guests says, "I mean, what's the worst that can happen if you go?" "Exactly," Bjorn says. As Bjorn and Louise clean up after dinner, we see a photo on the fridge of the two families together in Tuscany, both just looking so happy. Bjorn's plan worked because the next scene is of him, Louise, and Agnes on a ferry, clearly en route to go visit Patrick and his family. After hopping off the ferry, the family gets in a car and they drive off for the remainder of their commute in a town where the streets don't even have traffic lights and the roads are all lined with like tall trees. I mean, it almost looks like they're in a forest that just happens to have roads in it. "I guess we're here," Bjorn says as he parks the car. The house is a two-floor countryside home surrounded by only trees. They get out of the car and are greeted by Patrick and his family. "Yay, you made it," Karin yells to them as she comes outside to greet them. "Finally, yes," Bjorn happily replies. "So nice to see you again," Louise says. They all enter the house. Karin takes her coats and says that they can keep their shoes on or off, clearly trying to make an effort to make their guests feel comfortable. "We brought you a little something. It's a little souvenir from Denmark," Louise says as she hands Karin a gift. Karin takes a gift and then says, "Come on, this is your room," she says as she guides Louise and Bjorn to their bedroom. "Wow," Louise says. "That's wonderful," Bjorn adds, looking in the small guest room. Karin and Louise continue the tour as Patrick offers Bjorn a beer and tells him, "I want to show you my pool," and they go off together as Karin brings Louise and Agnes into Abel's room. "Hi, Abel," Agnes says, but he doesn't reply or look up at her. "He can't remember me, Mom." "Sure he can. He's just a little shy," Louise says. "Look, Agnes, we made you a little bed," Karin says, pointing to what looks like a thin couch cushion and just tiny pillow on the floor. Now, Agnes is small, but even this looks too small for her. Agnes looks at her mom, clearly concerned about her sleeping arrangements. "Do you like it?" Karin asks. "Yes, she likes it," Louise replies before saying to Agnes in Danish, "We'll figure it out, sweetheart." In the next scene, it's now nighttime and the two couples stand together in the kitchen as Patrick works on dinner, and Karin opens her gift. "Wow, it's coffee cups. That's sweet." I mean, they don't really seem too excited about the gift, but the topic changes as Patrick says, "Louise, this is for you," and he offers her a piece of meat. No, that's fine." I insist. "No, I'll wait till..." "No, it's my favorite part of the roast. It's delicious, it's crispy and soft at the same time. You need to eat it." Louise shakes her head saying no because remember, she's a vegetarian. But after some persistence from Patrick, she says, "Yeah, okay," and she takes the meat. It seems like she just felt awkward and didn't want to make a fuss, so saying yes was just easier since Patrick was being so persistent. "Just a small bite, honey," Bjorn whispers. So Louise takes a small bite. It's good, right? Patrick says. This is such an awkward scene. Like, you just kind of want to scream at Louise and tell her to say no. Like, don't eat meat just to be nice. Anyways, in the next scene, Bjorn is walking outside alone, taking out the garbage. He doesn't really know where to go, so he kind of looks up to the house at a window and sees that Karin is standing there, pointing him in a direction. He smiles and he follows where she's pointing and then drops the garbage bag he was carrying in its place. Bjorn starts walking back to the house and he's kind of just like looking around at the windows and just kind of exploring the area. He puts his face up to one of the windows to try to see what's inside this specific room, but it's too dark. He turns around and is slightly startled for a moment, but it turns out to just be Abel. "Oh, hi, Abel," he says happily. Abel just stares at him and Bjorn gets a little bit awkward. Then Abel slowly opens his mouth, revealing that he has no tongue. But before Bjorn can react to this, Patrick taps on the window and calls Abel to come inside, and he runs in. The couple sit in the living room, sort of having like small talk about the GPS that they used to find the house, as Abel can be heard crying in the background. Ignoring him, Patrick says, "It's frightening sometimes how we lose our ability to find our way through life because we hand over the responsibility to technology." "That is so true," Bjorn says, really meaning it. You know, he's still clearly very taken by Patrick. They kind of had the dynamic of Patrick is a cool kid and Bjorn wants to be liked by him. The two men keep talking about this, and finally Louise interrupts because Abel hasn't stopped crying. "Is he all right?" No, he's fine. He's fine. He'll fall asleep in a minute. I mean, he just does this sometimes. It's part of his disease," Karin says. "Yeah, what is that?" Bjorn asks. "Abel has congenital aglossia, meaning basically he's born without a tongue or with a much smaller tongue than you and me," Patrick says. "But is he in pain?" "Oh, no. There's no pain. He just has a hard time making himself understandable." "Oh no, I understand everything he says," Louise politely says. I'm not sure if Louise is just saying that because at least in the movie so far we've never even heard Abel speak, so I don't know if she was just saying that to be polite. Later that night, Agnes is brought into her parents' room by Bjorn to sleep with them. "Dad, can you leave the light on?" "No, we have to sleep now, sweetheart. You're with Mom and Dad now. Nothing's going to happen to you. We just have to settle in, right, sweetheart? I'm sure it'll be a nice weekend," Bjorn says. The family goes to sleep, and the next day the two families are out on a walk together in a very open field. Bjorn definitely looks to be the happiest one in the group. I mean, he literally has this huge smile on his face. Like, it seems like he's on cloud nine right now. You know, he's on this new adventure in a new place he's never been before. He's with this exciting couple. I mean, it just seems like he's full of life again. The adults are just kind of like standing and talking near a playground while Abel and Agnes are on a nearby slide. Abel is sitting at the bottom of the slide while Agnes is at the top waiting for him to move, but he won't. Agnes asks Abel to move, but he doesn't. So she calls over her mother to help. "Abel, do you think you can move away? Because Agnes really wants to try it," Louise says, but Abel just stares at her. Louise walks back to the adults and she politely asks Patrick and Karin if they can get Abel to move, and without saying anything, Patrick just storms over to Abel. He grabs him and tells him to apologize to Agnes. "Patrick, it's all right. He doesn't have to," Bjorn says. "No, he wants to apologize." "Yeah, he really wants to," Karin adds. "Say sorry to Agnes," Patrick says, sort of shoving Abel. "Sorry," Abel quietly says. Patrick ruffles his hair and then walks away back to the adults. With Abel now out of the way, Agnes goes down the slide. Bjorn continues to smile as the parents go back to polite conversation about food, but Louise isn't smiling. That incident was weird. Why was Patrick so aggressive towards Abel over something so little? Back at the house, Louise tells Bjorn to come here. He walks over to her and she whispers, "I don't think I like being here." "Why not?" "I just find them unpleasant to be around." "Okay," Bjorn says with a sigh. Karin enters a room and says, "Hey, am I interrupting?" No, of course not." "Well, Patrick and I would like to invite you to dinner tonight." "Oh, that's so nice of you," Louise says. "There's a nice restaurant with great local food just up the road, and we wouldn't want you to miss the opportunity while you're here." "Sounds good," Bjorn says, and Karin exits. He turns to Louise and says, "She's really unpleasant, huh? There's only a day and a half left. I'm sure you'll survive." So they stay. Louise and Agnes wait at the front door, ready to go out for dinner. Louise starts asking her questions like, "Are you excited to go out? Do you think they'll have food you like?" And just like questions like that. Agnes says yes to everything. I mean, she's clearly very excited to go out to dinner. During this conversation, Abel walks into the room in his pajamas. "Isn't Abel going?" Agnes asks her mother, but before she can answer, the front doorbell rings. "Yes, perfect timing," Karin says as she walks into the room. She opens a door and a man enters. They speak to each other in Dutch while Louise politely smiles, obviously confused about what's going on. Louise tries to introduce herself to the man, and Karin explains that this man, named Muhajid, doesn't speak any English. "And who is Muhajid?" Louise asks. "He's a babysitter," Karin says. Louise is very confused. But the kids are going as well, right? No. Tonight is without kids. Muhajid walks into the living room and he calls Agnes over and starts playing with her, and she starts laughing, enjoying herself. Karin says that he watches all of the kids in the neighborhood, that all of the parents trust him and choose him, and not just because of his prices. Now, Louise looks a little panicked because this is a complete stranger with her child. I mean, she's clearly debating in her mind what to do. Patrick interrupts her thoughts and he honks a car outside saying, "Guys, let's go." So Louise and Bjorn decide to leave Agnes with the sitter. Yeah, with this complete stranger that they know nothing about. In the car ride to the restaurant, Louise's discomfort with Karin and Patrick seems to grow, but she keeps putting on a smile, just kind of going with the flow. They're driving and driving for what seems to be much longer than just up the road. Louise starts to grow concerned about where they're going, but finally, after some time, they arrive at the restaurant. Now, this is kind of like a dive or like a hole in the wall type of place. It's dark and they're the only guests in the entire restaurant. Bjorn asks Patrick about the menu because, of course, it's not in a language that they understand, but when the server comes over, Patrick offers to just order for the entire table, and Bjorn says, "Yeah, that's fine with me." Patrick orders for everyone in Dutch, and Louise says, "Oh, and remember, I'm a vegetarian." "I'm sorry?" Patrick asks. "I don't eat meat." "Oh, yes, so good for the environment. But you eat fish, right? So you're not a vegetarian, you're a pescatarian." "Yes," Louise says. "And fish is not meat?" Patrick says, being a little bit defensive. "Of course, but I mean, it's better for the environment." "Oh, and the way the fishing industry works and how we treat the oceans is not affecting climate?" Louise looks a little bit surprised by Patrick's comments because this isn't how he acted when he first learned that she was a vegetarian in Italy. Bjorn just kind of changes the subject by giving a toast to good times, and Louise just chugs her wine. The night progresses, their table is covered in lots of yummy looking food, and the mood seems much lighter. In fact, Patrick and Karin get up and dance. Bjorn and Louise just kind of stare at the pair, wondering if they should also get up to dance. They decide to join them, but they're just much more stiff than the other couple. Patrick and Karin are dancing a little bit like more sexy, and they even start passionately making out, making Louise and Bjorn even more awkward. I mean, there's nothing wrong with your partner and you kissing and dancing and doing all that stuff, but they were full on making out with each other and like feeling each other up. I mean, it's just a bit odd to act that way in front of people you barely know. After some dancing, after some wine, after some food, it's time to pack everything up and pay the bill. Bjorn joins Patrick as he settles up the bill. "Wow, someone really had a good time tonight. Do you want us to chip in?" Bjorn says. "Thanks, man," Patrick says, and he hands him the bill. Bjorn pulls out his wallet and his credit card, but notices that Patrick doesn't do the same. Confused, Bjorn asks, "So the dinner's on us?" "Oh, that's so kind. Thanks, man," Patrick says as he pats him on the shoulder and walks away. Bjorn looks a little stunned by this, and again, just to point out, I know Louise and Bjorn are staying with them, so like it might make sense for them to pay for dinner as like a thank you for letting them stay at their house for free, but Patrick and Karin were the ones who invited them out to dinner, so I feel like they should have been the ones paying or at least chipping in. That's why Bjorn was so confused by the situation, but he doesn't speak up and decides to just pay the bill by himself. They all get back in the car and they start heading home. However, this is when things get more tense. Patrick is playing rock music way too loud and ignores Bjorn and Louise's polite request for him to turn down the music. He just keeps telling them like, "I love this song, it's such a great song," and finally, Louise snaps at him and just yells at Patrick to turn the music off. Karin just kind of starts laughing until Patrick finally turns the music off. Karin turns back to Louise and Bjorn and says, "I'm truly sorry." Patrick also apologizes, he laughs, and then he turns the music back up to the same volume. Louise and Bjorn again ask him to turn it down, and at this point Patrick is clearly drunk. He's swerving as he drives, he almost crashes into a tree. I mean, it's absolutely chaotic, but they do make it home okay. As soon as Louise walks into the house, she immediately goes to check on the kids, and they're both sleeping peacefully in Abel's room. So Louise goes and she takes a shower to get ready for bed. As she's showering, she hears the door open and close. We see a shadow walk by the shower and hear someone brushing their teeth. We hear the person take a few steps, blocking the light from the shower, and then the brushing sound gets closer. This person is standing right in front of the shower. Louise just stands there, frozen, and then we hear the person leave. Quickly, Louise turns the water off. She comes into the bedroom where Bjorn is reading, and she sits down next to him, but doesn't tell him about what just happened. Instead, she kind of just like cuddles up next to him. They start kissing, and then they start having sex. Suddenly, they hear Agnes calling, "Mom, I want to lie in your bed." But they ignore her and they continue having sex snacks while Agnes keeps calling out for them. As they're doing this, we then see Patrick look into their room through a stained glass window, and then he walks away. Yeah, this man was just standing there watching Louise and Bjorn have sex. Later on in the night, Bjorn and Louise are asleep, but then Louise wakes up and goes to check on Agnes. She walks into Abel's room and sees that Agnes's bed is completely empty while Abel sleeps peacefully in his bed. Louise seems worried, but she calmly walks to Patrick and Karin's bedroom just to see if maybe Agnes is there. She slowly opens a door so that she doesn't wake them, and sure enough, we see Patrick sleeping naked next to Karin, who is covered with a blanket. But they're not alone. On the other side of the bed is Agnes. She is sleeping in the same bed with Karin and Patrick. Like, what? Louise is so confused by this, and she goes to quietly pick up Agnes and brings her to her and Bjorn's bedroom. She turns on the lights and she tries to wake her husband by lightly shaking him and calling his name until he opens his eyes. I want to go home. Is something wrong? I want to go home now, Louise says as she starts packing. Louise, Bjorn, and Agnes eventually pack up all of their things and they walk out of the house as it just starts to become morning. Bjorn seems half awake and slightly confused by the situation, but they all get into the car and start driving away as Abel watches him leave from his bedroom window. As they drive, Agnes asks, "Where's Ninnis? You haven't got him?" "No." "Are you sure?" Louise looks all around the car for the bunny, but he's not there. They pull over on the side of the road and Bjorn checks his suitcase, but the bunny isn't there either. They continue driving and Louise tells Agnes that they'll just buy her a new bunny when they get home, but of course Agnes wants that bunny and she starts to cry. Louise tries to comfort her by telling her that Ninus lives with Abel now and that he'll have a nice time with him. Bjorn looks at his daughter and then he turns the car around to drive back to Patrick's house to get the bunny. "Thanks, Dad," Agnes says. They arrive back at the house and Bjorn parks the car and goes inside while Louise and Agnes wait in the car. As they're waiting, Agnes suddenly sees something underneath the car seat. It's Ninnis. The bunny was right there the entire time. Louise tells Agnes to stay there because now she has to go back in the house to tell Bjorn to stop looking for the bunny. Louise quietly looks around the house and then she hears voices. She goes upstairs to see Bjorn talking to Patrick. "What's going on?" Karin asks as she enters the room. "Well, we have a situation here. Someone left without saying goodbye," Patrick says. Bjorn tries to explain that they had some good days, but that there are some things that make them believe that they should go home. Patrick insists on knowing what these things are, and Bjorn nervously says, "Well, Agnes's bed is really tiny and it's on the floor and she just doesn't feel comfortable sleeping there," and he's kind of struggling to describe things, and he whispers to Louise, "Can you help a little, honey?" Louise respectfully lists all the reasons, like she's a vegetarian, but that they've only served meat, that the drive to the restaurant was extremely uncomfortable, that the music was way too loud, that Patrick was drinking and driving, and that their PDA at the restaurant made them so uncomfortable. Patrick listens to all of this and says, "I'm in shock." Karin asks if she can say something and she explains that they forgot Louise was a vegetarian and that she could have spoken up about it but didn't. Then the problem at the restaurant was just them having fun that evening, and also what's so wrong with kissing the person you love. Then she says that they're really sorry that Agnes doesn't feel comfortable in Abel's bedroom and that she's sorry that they don't have a bigger place with a king-size bed for her. "If you only knew how much Abel was looking forward to sharing his toys and his room with Agnes," she says. She's definitely saying things that kind of put the blame on Louise and Bjorn. But Louise is standing strong and says, "It's crossing the line when you pick up my daughter at night and then you take her into your bed where you slept next to her naked." "Yeah, but where were you, Louise?" Agnes kept calling. She was crying. "Where were you?" Karin asks. Louise has nothing to say to this. She just kind of looks down. "No one is forcing you to stay, but I really hope you do because today is going to be a great day," Patrick says. Louise and Bjorn exchange a kind of confused look, but they decide to stay. I mean, their belongings were already packed up in the car. Louise was set on leaving, but somehow she was persuaded into staying. In the next scene, Agnes is kicking a ball with Abel while Louise rakes in the garden while Karin cuts plants with small scissors that she says are too dull to cut anything. Meanwhile, Patrick and Bjorn are in the car driving. They talk about their music taste and Patrick plays Bjorn a Dutch song. It's like a soft, sweet song and he sings along to it. They park their car and Patrick apologizes apologizes for making Bjorn feel uncomfortable in the past. Bjorn tells him to not worry about it, but Patrick tells him that sometimes he has a feeling in his chest and it's a powerful feeling, which he likes. Bjorn relates to this and says, "Normally I just try to hold it down or keep it in chains." "Why?" Patrick asks him. "Too many rules, I guess. I don't know, it's claustrophobic, you know? It's like I become this person that I don't want to be." Bjorn actually gets emotional during this conversation and he starts to cry as he explains that the person it makes him be is someone who takes his kid to school, goes to work, plays squash once a week, and has dinner with people that he doesn't even like. Bjorn clearly feels unhappy or at least unsatisfied with his life. "I want to show you something," Patrick says. They walk past an empty pit that looks like it might have once been dug up there to have something built there. They keep walking until they're at the top of a hill and then Patrick screams. Bjorn kind of takes a moment, he looks at Patrick scream and then he does the same, but he really lets it out. They both just start screaming together, letting out all of their emotions. Back at the house and feeling more energized, Patrick and Bjorn run towards the outhouse, holding towels and only wearing their boxers. The two of them sit in the small pool drinking beer and laughing. After their swim, they join Louise and Karin in the kitchen. Bjorn kisses her. Clearly this afternoon with Patrick has made him feel like a new man. Agnes and Abel run into the room and Agnes says, "Mom, can Abel and I show you a dance?" "We'll do it after lunch, sweetheart." Karin then asks Agnes to set the table and she happily does. Louise is chopping up some vegetables when she accidentally cuts her finger. She's in pain and goes to the kitchen sink and runs it underwater. "Patrick, maybe you can take a look at her finger?" "Sure," he says. "It's good we have a doctor in the house." "I'm not a doctor," Patrick says. Louise seems confused. "But didn't you say you were a doctor?" "Did I?" "Oh, I lied." "You lied?" Bjorn asks. "Yeah, sometimes I get a little insecure when I meet new people." "He just wanted to make a good impression," Karin adds. Louise and Bjorn seem a little bit confused. "What do you do for work then?" Bjorn asks. "I don't work." "No, I'm unemployed. I've never worked. I don't believe in working." This is a really big thing to lie about, but Louise and Bjorn just kind of keep their composure like it's fine. While this is happening, Karin switches the conversation and she corrects Agnes for the way that she's setting up the table. Louise and Bjorn exchange a look as if to say, like, "This is weird. Why is she correcting our child?" But they don't do anything about it. So after this, they all sit down and eat. Patrick is talking about cheese, and Karin wipes something off Agnes's face in like a very motherly way. Then after that, Karin corrects something Agnes is doing in Dutch. It's not translated in the movie, but it's something along the lines of like, "Eat your vegetables" or "Close your mouth when you're eating," which is weird because Agnes doesn't even speak that language, so she can't even understand what Karin is saying. Karin then corrects Agnes again, and this is when Louise finally steps in and says, "Stop telling my daughter what to do." "Okay, relax. I'm sorry," says Karin, and they continue eating dinner. After their meal, all the parents sit and watch Agnes and Abel's dance routine. Suddenly, Patrick pauses the music and he speaks to Abel in Dutch. He's not too happy with how Abel is dancing, and everyone else is catching on to that. "One more time, you're doing so well," Louise says to ease the mood. "Sorry about that," Patrick says before he starts the music over. The kids start the dance again, but Patrick quickly cuts the music again to correct Abel. "It's okay, they're both really good," Bjorn says. "Yeah, but he has no rhythm at all and he's messing up the routine." "No, but they're just kids," Bjorn says. Patrick explains calmly that Abel needs to concentrate to reach his full potential, so one more time. He hits play and the kids start dancing. This time Abel watches Agnes to follow her doing the moves, and Louisa's smile starts to drop in anticipation of Patrick's reaction to this. Patrick turns the music off and stands up as he yells at Abel in Dutch. He actually moves Abel's feet with his hands, doing the counts, and then he turns Abel's face with his hand, continuing to sternly give him directions. I mean, he's being so aggressive about this, like he's hurting his child, and Agnes gets scared by this and she runs to her mother and says, "I don't want to dance anymore." "No," she has to say because it's a duet, Patrick says. Louise steps in and says she doesn't have to dance, but Bjorn encourages Agnes to just do it one last time. Agnes reluctantly gets up and Patrick counts him in. The kids dance and Abel has the same performance quality. I mean, he's a young child, but that's not an excuse for Patrick. He gets so frustrated at Abel's dancing that he throws his glass against the wall. Louise grabs Agnes and sits her down next to her. The room is silent and Abel begins to quietly cry. Patrick says, Okay, and he counts down and starts the music over again. However, Abel just continues to stand there crying. I mean, Abel is just so little and so cute, so it's just really hard to watch this scene, and Patrick's standards just seem unexplainably high. Louise looks very concerned. I mean, she keeps looking at Bjorn to do something. Finally, Bjorn steps up and takes the speaker from Patrick. What's the problem? Patrick asks. I mean, you cannot, I mean, he's only a child for Christ's sake. I mean, what the hell is wrong with you? Can't you see he's crying, that he's in pain? Bjorn says. Karin chimes in and says that Patrick's behavior isn't wrong just because they do things differently. Bjorn is just really upset about this and says, this is about doing what's right, like giving your son love when he's crying. I mean, Bjorn finally stands up to Patrick and says, Patrick, I mean, what the why can't you just let him dance? Oh, that wasn't dancing, Patrick says, not backing down. I mean, you threw a cup at the wall, Bjorn says. Louise has just had enough about this and she rushes out of the house. She stops walking outside and she tries to catch her breath as Bjorn and Agnes come outside to check on her. Bjorn tries to put his hand on her shoulder, but she kind of just like pulls her body away from him. She asks Bjorn to take Agnes inside because she doesn't want her daughter to see her like this. He tries to get her to go inside, but Agnes sweetly still wants to check on her mom and asks her why she's sad. But Louise snaps at Agnes and yells at her to go away and to leave her alone. With that, Bjorn rushes Agnes inside. Later that night, Bjorn and Louise pack as Agnes watches something on an iPad. Bjorn, just completely brushing off everything that's happened, says to Agnes that he'll take her to her flute lessons this Tuesday. It seems like they're just getting ready to go back home and get back to their normal routine. Bjorn goes to the bathroom and he starts brushing his teeth when suddenly Patrick enters the bathroom. Bjorn is sort of surprised, having the bathroom door closed is a boundary, but he doesn't say anything and Patrick just walks in, pees, and flushes a toilet. After flushing, he turns and he looks at Bjorn in the mirror. They both just kind of like look at each other for a moment. I think both of them are just like waiting to see if the other will say something first, but neither one of them say anything, and then Patrick just leaves the bathroom without washing his hands. Later that night, Bjorn, Agnes, and Louise are asleep in the guest bedroom. Bjorn is next to them, but he can't sleep, mainly because he can hear Abel crying and Patrick yelling at him. Patrick's yelling gets angrier and then someone turns the TV on, probably to mask the sounds. Bjorn gets out of bed and follows the sounds of the TV. He walks down the hall and it seems like the yelling and the crying is over. Continuing to follow the sound of the TV, Bjorn walks upstairs and into the living room. Bjorn turns off the TV and then he hears the kitchen sink lightly running, so he goes and turns it off. Suddenly, he hears the outhouse door open and close. He looks up and it seems to be opening and closing because of the wind or from not being closed properly as Bjorn heads outside. As he does, he walks past the family photo of both families on their fridge. It's the same photo that Bjorn and Louise had on their fridge back at home. Bjorn slowly walks towards the outhouse doors, and inside the lighthouse, the light leading upstairs is on. So Bjorn slowly walks up the spiral staircase, which leads him to like an attic-like room. This room is in the shape of like a triangle instead of a square or like a rectangle because of the shape of the roof. Now, inside the attic, all along the walls are taped up photos. Bjorn looks at the photos and in one picture, he notices Abel, smiling, happily standing in front of two people. Next to him stands an unhappy looking little girl who is also standing in front of two people. But the people this girl is standing in front of are Karin and Patrick. And Abel is standing in front of two strangers. Bjorn is so confused, so he looks at the other photos to try to understand what's going on. They're all family photos of two families, but each time Karin and Patrick have a different sad-looking child standing in front of them. Bjorn compares the photos, seeing the same child, one standing happily with their parents, later standing unhappily in front of Patrick and Karin. Does this mean that Patrick and Karin have been abducting these kids from their true families? As he's thinking about this, Bjorn suddenly hears a door again. He's breathing heavily with fear, but he goes downstairs to investigate the noise. There seems to be no one there, but he sees a light on at the other outhouse, so he walks over to it. When he peeks inside, Bjorn is shocked to see Abel, still dressed in his pajamas, floating face down in the pool, dead. Bjorn takes off running to the house. He quietly enters his and Louise's bedroom and whispers as quietly as possible, "Louise, we're going home." "What's going on?" she says, half awake. "Agnes, wake up," he says, sitting her up. "Calm down," Louise tells him. "Come on, damn it, let's go." In the next scene, Louise carries Agnes to the car as Bjorn carries her suitcase. He rushes them into the car, keeping an eye on the house. Bjorn starts the car, but we can see that the car is almost completely out of gas. He quietly backs up the car and drives away. Louise Louise and Agnes sleep in the back seat as Bjorn drives down the empty country road looking terrified. A car approaches them and he gets worried, but it passes them and keeps going. They stop at a gas station to fill up the car and then Bjorn continues driving. They come across another car that's pulled over on the side of the road and Bjorn just kind of looks at the car worried. Suddenly, a car appears in the rearview mirror. Bjorn is panicked, so he goes off the road and he just starts driving on like a bumpy, unpaved ground. This wakes Louise up. I mean, she's very confused about what's going on because Bjorn hasn't told her why they're leaving yet, about what he saw in the attic, nothing. Suddenly, the car gets stuck. Bjorn tries to drive, but the tires just spin and they don't go anywhere. Do you have any signal? No. Bjorn gets out of the car and he looks around, but they're in the middle of nowhere. He sees something though. There's a house up there. I'll run and I'll call for help. Lock all the doors, okay? He tells Louise and Agnes. Hurry, Louise says. She still seems very confused about what's going on and about her husband's urgency. As they're doing this, we see that Patrick is watching the family from his own car, but they don't see him. Bjorn starts running to the house and it's quite a journey. He has to go through this small waist-deep river to get there and then he has to climb over a fence, but he finally makes it to the house. Hello? He calls out. He starts knocking on the door and he yells hello louder. However, no one comes to open. After being unsuccessful at getting help, Bjorn, now covered in dirt, runs back to the family's car. He opens the back door and is surprised to see Louise and Agnes aren't there. The car is empty, other than the bunny. Frantically, he starts looking around and calls out to them as loud as he can, but there's no one there. Bjorn sobs as he hugs the bunny, still calling out for his daughter Agnes. As he's crying, suddenly a car slowly drives up to Bjorn and stops right in front of him. The driver's door opens and he hears, "Hey Bjorn," from Patrick. Bjorn looks at him with pure terror in his eyes. "Thanks for the call. I'm glad you agreed to meet us up on the road," Patrick says. We see Louise and Agnes sitting in the back seat of the car with Karin, completely unbothered and unworried about being with them. "Thanks for helping out. It's so nice of you," Louise tells Karin. "Of course," she says. So Patrick has obviously lied to Louise and said that Bjorn got service and called them to come pick them up because our car got stuck. Patrick walks up to Bjorn and says, "Get in the car. Please don't hurt us. Please don't hurt my family. We just want to go home." Bjorn sobs. He is just absolutely terrified. "Hey, it's okay. Relax. As long as you do what we say, it's gonna be fine," Patrick reassures him. Bjorn still looks afraid, but this seems to be the only option. So he gets in the car, in the passenger seat, and Patrick drives. "Do you know when we will be back at the house?" Louise asks. "It won't be long now," Karin says. "We're almost there, sweetie," Louise tells Agnes. "Mom, is Abel still sleeping?" "Yes, I think so." Bjorn doesn't even react to this, even though he knows it's a lie. He seems to be trying to stay calm. "Is Abel alone at the house?" Louise asks. "No, Muhajid is looking after him. He wakes up early anyways, so," Karin replies. Louise rubs her hand on Bjorn's shoulder and asks him, "Are you okay?" "Sure, I'm fine," he says and puts his hand on hers. "You have cold fingers. You need a hot shower," Louise tells him. Patrick stops the car and he puts the brakes on. He looks at Bjorn, then he gets out of the car and pees on a bush. Bjorn looks at the keys that are still in the ignition. I mean, this is his chance to break free and save his family. He thinks about it, but doesn't do anything. Patrick gets back in the car and continues driving. "Mom, I want to go home now. We'll be there right away. Are we there soon?" Louise asks, but neither Patrick or Karin answer her. "I'm scared, Mom," Agnes says. "Be quiet," Patrick snaps at her. "Excuse me?" Louise says, completely shocked by Patrick since she still doesn't understand what he's capable of. "Honey, just do as I say," Bjorn tells her. "But we've taken a huge detour," Louise says. "Will you be quiet, please?" Karin asks her. Louise is getting more frustrated. "Can you tell us when we'll be back at the house?" Still, Patrick says nothing. "We're going to your house though, right?" Bjorn asks. Patrick is still silent. He slowly stops the car and flashes his headlights several times. Another parked car flashes their headlights several times back. "Bjorn, what's going on?" Louise asks. Bjorn doesn't answer. He looks at Patrick and then looks at the man getting out of the other car. It's Muhajid, the supposed babysitter. "Mom, I'm scared." "It's okay, sweetie. Mom's with you," Louise comforts Agnes, rubbing her head. "But I'm so frightened." "Remember what Mom always told you, sweetie. When Mom's here, nothing can happen to you because Mom will always, but I want to go home to my own bed." "I know." Karin looks at this interaction lovingly, which is honestly just so creepy considering what we know. "You have to tell us what's going on," Louise says to the adults. "Shut the fuck up," Patrick snaps at her. Bjorn turns to him and says, "Don't talk to my family like that." And before he can finish his last word, Patrick punches Bjorn in the face, extremely hard. Agnes screams and Louise panics as she holds Agnes close. Louise tries to open the door, but it's locked. She brings Agnes as close as she possibly can to her, and Karin starts speaking to Agnes in Dutch in a sympathetic way. Again, it's not translated, but I think she's saying something along the lines of, "Everything will be okay." Louise tries to shield Agnes from Karin, bringing her into her lap. "Louise, please let go of her," Karin says. Bjorn takes off his seatbelt and he tries to move to the back seat, but Patrick punches him again. Then Karin pulls out the scissors she used earlier for gardening from her jacket. "Louise," Karin says as Louise looks forward, shaking her head in fear. Karin puts her hand on Agnes's back and Agnes yells, "Mom!" Louise shrugs her hand away and Karin just keeps saying, "You will let go, you will let go." "No, I'm not going to let go." "Yes, you will." Muhajir walks over to their car and he opens Louise's door. He puts his arm around Louise, choking her. She tries to fight him off and Agnes is screaming, "Mom, Mom," and Patrick crawls into the back seat and Bjorn weakly hits him and tries to pull him back. However, Patrick turns to Bjorn, holds him down and punches him in the face twice and then continues to the back seat. Agnes continues to scream, "Mom, Mom," in a panic, and this is when Patrick and Karin hold Agnes's mouth open as wide as they can. Karin then holds her tongue with one hand and then takes her scissors in the other and starts to cut Agnes's tongue off. Louise watches this in pure horror. She screams and tries to hit them, but she can't really do anything since Muhajir is still choking her. Karin finishes fully cutting off Agnes's tongue, and as Bjorn watches, he throws up from the sheer horror of what he just witnessed. Agnes heavily bleeds from her wound. Blood is pouring down her face. Muhajir then grabs Agnes and pulls her out of the car, closing the door behind him and locking Louise in again. He carries Agnes to his car as Louise pounds on the windows and pulls at the door handle and screams for Agnes. Patrick then drives away as Louise continues to yell, "Agnes, Agnes, Agnes." Louise is screaming and she's pounding on the car seats and she's doing whatever she can, but Karin and Patrick have no reaction to this. As for Bjorn, he just kind of stares ahead in horror. I'm sure he's thinking that this is exactly what happened to Abel and his family and to all the kids that came before him. And he let it happen to his own daughter. Louise, feeling completely helpless, starts to sob, but all Bjorn can do is just keep looking forward with tears building in his eye. He can't comfort his wife or do anything. He's helpless too. Patrick eventually stops the car at the same place he took Bjorn the day before, the abandoned pit. Patrick and Karin get out of the car and then slowly Bjorn, who's now covered in blood, and Louise get out of the car, clearly in shock from what just happened. They stand in front of the headlights of the car and Louise just kind of looks down and Bjorn starts to cry. "Why are you doing this?" he asks. "Because you let me," Patrick replies. Then he tells them to take off their clothes. Bjorn doesn't move. He's still panicked, but calmly Louise takes her clothes off and then Bjorn does too. Both of them take everything off until they're completely naked. After that, Patrick and Karin walk them down into the pit. Louise and Bjorn walk all the way down the small hill, but Karin and Patrick stop at a pile of rocks. When they reach the bottom of the pit, Louise hugs Bjorn and just doesn't let him go. They both sob, terrified of what just happened and of what's going to happen next. "I'm sorry," Bjorn says, but before Louise can say anything, she's hit in the head with a baseball-sized rock. She puts her hand on her head and sees that she's bleeding. Surprised, Bjorn looks up at Patrick and Karin, but then another rock hits Louise in the head and then she falls to the ground. Bjorn tries to carry her away, but he's hit too. Patrick and Karin continue to hit them with a rock as they lay on the ground and cry out in pain. Eventually, Bjorn and Louise are stoned to death. Karin and Patrick just stand there looking at their bodies, and then Karin just cuddles up to Patrick. The sun begins to rise and Bjorn and Louise lay dead in the pit. So we fast forward a bit and we see a shot of other families vacationing together, jumping into the pool and having fun. We see a car driving up an Italian road and driving the car is Patrick. His wife Karin is sitting in the passenger seat and sitting in the back seat holding the bunny is now a blonde Agnes. It looks like they're on their way to their new vacation spot to continue their murderous cycle after getting away with it once again. And with that, that is Speak No Evil. Wow, this movie, honestly, it's just so crazy. I was not expecting any of that to happen. I mean, obviously something was off with Karin and especially with Patrick, but I did not think that they were doing that, that they were cutting off the tongues of kids and like kidnapping them and like doing it over and over again. At first I thought that they were just like weird and like abusive parents and that was it, and that they were just gonna like rob the couple or just like torture them. But like I did not think that this was like a whole planned scheme that they continue to do over and over again. But after watching the movie, it's clear that this has a message. I think it's trying to say that being polite and being a people pleaser can really be the death of you. Because first of all, hold on, let me take a sip of my coffee. Okay, first of all, Louise didn't even want to go on this trip. I mean, she literally told Bjorn, like, we don't really know this couple, like, going away to stay at their house for a weekend is kind of insane. But she was convinced to do so after her friend said that it would be impolite to not go. Then it seems like Patrick and Karin were kind of like testing Bjorn and Louise the entire movie about how much they could really get away with without them saying anything. Like how Louise allowed them to have a random man babysit their daughter because she didn't want to make a fuss by saying that she didn't want a complete stranger watching her child. She also ate meat to not be rude towards Patrick. I mean, there were just like so many instances where Patrick and Karin were acting really out of control, but didn't really face any consequences because Bjorn and Louise just kind of like let it happen. And in the end, when Patrick gets out of the car and like leaves the keys in the ignition, he feels comfortable doing that because he knows that Bjorn isn't going to try anything, and he was right. I mean, that was literally Bjorn's moment to get away and save his family, so it's crazy that he didn't even try to reach for the keys. Also, in the end, when Bjorn and Louise were killed, they didn't even try to fight back. I mean, Karin and Patrick didn't even have any weapons on them. They just simply told Louise and Bjorn to get out of the car, and they listened to them just because. The director of the movie has spoken out about this and said that this politeness is like a really big part of Danish culture and that he was exploring that with this movie. It also kind of reminds me of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I'm not gonna spoil that movie, but if you guys want me to do a video on that movie, definitely let me know because I love that movie. I love the whole murder mystery part of that, so I can definitely do a video on that. But that movie also mentions how being polite can get people into dangerous situations. Overall, I just really enjoyed this movie, but we had to talk about some potential plot holes just because there were some things that kind of stood out to me. First of all, Patrick and Karin were definitely not the best criminals. I know this is fictional, but like my true crime brain like thinks about this. I mean, first of all, they use their real names, or at least their real house, to abduct and murder these families. And on top of that, Louise's and Bjorn's friends know where they went and who they were going to go spend the weekend with. So like, if police were really gonna get on this, like the friends could easily just be like, oh yeah, they were gonna go with this couple that they met in Italy. Like, here's their postcard, here's their address, here's everything. So I feel like it would also be easy to like track down Patrick and Karin. They also were talking about how they used a GPS to get there, so police could easily check their phones and their GPS to track where they were. On top of that, there was like all those family photos in the attic, so if police did go there, they would be able to find all of this evidence. So it just seems like they weren't like the smartest criminal, but at the same time, they have gotten away with it for so long. So I mean, I know it's just like a movie, but still, like, I was just thinking about that the entire time. Another plot hole, or just like a question I have, is like, why do they do it? Is it like a child trafficking thing, or are they doing it to just rob the families, or are they doing it just because they're sick human beings and there's really no purpose to it? Okay, my camera's about to die, but anyways, I feel like there has to be some like monetary gain through it, because otherwise, why would the fake babysitter help? Like, what does a babysitter get out of this? Another part that stood out to me, and again, this might just be me overthinking it, but how did no one in the community notice that Patrick and Karin had a new kid every few months? Like, wouldn't the neighbors or just like someone in town notice that 1 month they have a little girl, but then the next month they have a little boy? Again, maybe I'm just like being picky and overthinking it, but yeah, let me know what you guys think about this movie down below. I know the American version literally just came out. Again, I haven't seen it yet, but I really want to, because I heard that there are a few changes to the story. Like, they didn't follow it exactly to the original version, and I really like James McAvoy, so let me know if you guys saw the new version and what you guys think about it. I love making these type of videos, videos. So if you have any other movies you want me to talk about, make sure to let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you guys again so much for being here. I hope you guys enjoyed the first video to this brand new spooky channel. I am so excited about this channel. I feel like it's so nice to just like take a break from true crime and just talk about something fictional and just like talk about like a thriller and like mystery stories. So if you guys want to see more movie videos, make sure to subscribe down below and give this video a thumbs up, por favor. Thank you again so much for being so supportive. And if you guys are looking for true crime videos, you guys can check out my main channel, which is at True Crime Jackie. I will have it linked down below. But yeah, I will see you guys here every single week to discuss a fictional thriller and mystery movie. So yeah, once again, let me know your thoughts on Speak No Evil down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, familia!